Welcome, everyone. It's so exciting to see so many people joining this event, especially from so many different places. My name is Susanne. I work as a community manager for Thoughtworks Germany. And alongside with my colleagues Charlotte, that you just met, and Steffi, I'm the organizer of this event series, which we started last year in November. This is already the fourth event. And if you couldn't join the past ones and you're interested in the talks, you'll find all of the recordings on our website. My colleagues will post the link to the chat. Maybe before we get started, some words why we actually kicked off the series and a bit about Thoughtworks. We are a global software consultancy. You'll find us currently, I think, in about 15 countries worldwide, and we're specialized on creating custom software with and for our clients. As an organization that is working globally, diversity has somehow always played an important role for us, just based on that. But some years back, as many other organizations in the industry, we also realized that we are sometimes lacking on including some of our colleagues, especially our non-male colleagues, in giving equal opportunities to everyone. So we started having a very close look on gender diversity. And today we have over 40% of people identifying as non-male working in leadership positions, and about the same amount of people as non-male technologists. In the past years, our focus then shifted also to many other dimensions of diversity. With that process came not just experience on how to make a workplace more inclusive, it also led us to have today many colleagues who are very engaged and passionate about topics like diversity and inclusion, and represent many dimensions of diversity themselves. We had the feeling that these words, diversity and inclusion, and all that comes along with it, became such buzzwords. And on the other hand side, many discussions are often lacking concrete ideas and initiatives and so we wanted to use the series as a platform, or a starting point for a platform, to share our experiences and learnings, and to have a safe space for discussions, and to explore next steps altogether. Today, my colleague Amy will share more about her experiences as a recruiter with hiring from diverse backgrounds, and will offer some useful hacks for those who want to get started on this journey. Before I hand over to her, I would like to introduce her quickly. Amy is originally from Ireland and joined Thoughtworks about a year ago. She's extremely passionate about equality and believes that everyone should have the same access to information, but also that the right processes must be in place if companies actually want to increase diversity efforts and take this topic seriously. Together with a friend, Amy co-founded CWE Network, which is non-profit and empowers women from marginalized backgrounds in their career and their job search. We will learn more about these initiatives during her talk, I think. And if someone is interested in exploring Thoughtworks a little bit more, you'll find a little QR code in Amy's virtual background, you will see in a second, that leads you directly to our website. In case you have questions during the talk, as Charlotte mentioned before, just ping them to the chat. We will have a Q&A session afterwards. And now I welcome Amy to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Susanna, and thank you, Charlotte, and everyone. It's so nice to see so many people joining this event. This is my first ever meetup, so I'm super excited. So first of all, thank you so much for joining, and I can see that there's some people from home as well on the call. I see all of you and people that I worked with in the past, and even some clients and candidates I've worked with before, so it's so amazing to see everyone. I'm just going to quickly share my screen so that you can all see my slides, okay? All right.
Amy, sorry.
All good?
No, sorry. Amy, this is your whiteboard.
Oh, oops. 1 second. Okay. Great. Finally. Okay, can everyone see? All good? Awesome. Okay, so we have a lot of content to get through today, so I'm going to try and be as concise as possible. As Susanna said, my name is Amy. I'm originally from Ireland, and I've been with Thoughtworks for just coming up to a year now. I'm based here in Berlin, and I'm one of the recruiters and recruiting primarily for roles in Germany. I lived also for 6 years in London, and I lived for 2 years in Melbourne before that. So I have experience recruiting across a couple of different demographics. As Susanna mentioned, I'm super passionate about this topic, this diversity topic, inclusion and equality. So I did co-found a network last year, which was kind of, I guess, my way of taking action, but I'll come on to that shortly. And it was one of the things that I felt like I could do to make a difference, where I host workshops, career workshops for women from marginalized backgrounds. Here's the index for today. So we're going to be talking about the what, the why, and the how around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to be touching on unconscious bias, going through a couple of key takeaways. I'm going to be sharing some resources with everyone, and then do Q&A. So I will probably be talking, hopefully, for about 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, because I want to leave enough time to answer some questions as well at the end. Okay, so the what around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the first slide that I want to share, I'm sure you've all seen maybe this image or an image similar to this. And one of the things primarily that I want to focus on today is racism and inequality around BIPOC, so Black and Indigenous people of color. And I'm going to be using this term quite a bit through the presentation. So that's what it means. And I think, you know, I'm coming at this, I'm a white woman. I'm coming at this from a perspective of a white woman. So there's only so much that I know, and there's only so much that I obviously have experienced. I can't speak for a Black person or a person of color. But the most important thing for me is that, you know, we as white people speak up a little bit more. Yeah, it's super uncomfortable. Of course, I have imposter syndrome talking about this topic. That's totally, you know, it's a super uncomfortable topic for white people to talk about when it comes to racism. But it's really about, you know, going through that discomfort, feeling that discomfort, and talking about the topic, because if we don't talk about it, nothing will happen and nothing will change. It's not up to Black people to deal with systemic racism. I mean, we've all seen the media, we've all seen what's happening all over the world, not just in the US. So I think it's important that we all share the load. And for me, last year was a really rude awakening. I mean, I was kind of, this topic was something that I was interested in for a long time, for most of my life, but I felt like I was very naive about a lot of things. And, you know, what started off as one innocent guy going for a run in broad daylight, getting lynched in the middle of the day, to then another guy in the US, you know, who had his neck knelt on by a police officer for 9 minutes, and then to a woman being shot while she was asleep at night, you know. Just for me was like, okay, how many of these people do we need to see? That was Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. There were so many names and so many people that are just continuing to come up, and it's like, how much of this do we have to see? How many people do we have to see killed at the hands of the police or killed at the hands of racism for us to actually do something about it? So as you can tell, this is something I'm pretty passionate about. So I want to center the topic a little bit about around race today. Diversity, what is it? So it's the practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, etc. So I just want to put a question out there to everyone. I just want to kind of take a moment to get everyone to reflect. Last year, There was kind of this, after everything that happened with George Floyd, there was this kind of Instagram campaign, I guess you could call it, where everyone was encouraged to share a black square on their Instagram and then have a hashtag Blackout Tuesday. And I want to know, you don't have to comment or anything like that. This is not about shaming. This is really about getting you to kind of reflect. How many of you actually shared that black square, first of all? And then if you did share that black square, like, what did you do then after that to actually create some form of change? And it can be small. Maybe you did nothing at all. But if you did nothing at all, then that's performative. Then you're just doing it to show people, oh, I care about systemic racism. I care that these people were killed. But actually, did you do anything? Do you really care? And if you didn't do anything, then why didn't you do anything? And I'm not, again, trying to shame people. I'm trying to get you to reflect, and I'm trying to get you to think about your position in this whole movement. What is your position in this, in the racial hierarchy, in the scheme of things? I think reflection is a really important part of this topic. And the second point I want to make is diversity is a topic that should be absolutely business as usual across all functions. So I have seen time and time again across different organizations, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to be shaking your heads and agreeing with me, where you have like a diversity department within an organization. You have a head of diversity, and more often than not, 99.9% of the time, I think it is a person from a minority group. And they're the head of diversity. And then they're expected to carry the load for the whole company of that, of the diversity topic. They're supposed to dismantle the racist structures in place. And it's like, no, this is a topic for every function. This is a topic that has to be business as usual across every single function in all of these organizations, so that we're all, because marketing has a part to play in it, finance has a part to play in it, the boardroom, the executive leadership team has a part, the biggest part to play in it. It has to start from the top, because shoving it all onto one person is just not going to work. It's not sustainable, it's not effective, and this is probably why a lot of companies are behind. And then intersectionality. So this is a really interesting one, and this is something that is super important to actually acknowledge. And I don't know how many people have heard about intersectionality, but it is a term that was coined by civil rights activist and lawyer Kimberly Crenshaw. And essentially what intersectionality is, it's an overlap of the different protected characteristics that you hold. So let's say I might be marginalized because I'm a woman. But if I was a Black woman, then I'm marginalized because I'm Black, and I'm marginalized because I'm a woman. If I'm a trans Black woman, then I'm marginalized because I'm trans. So I experience a form of discrimination because of that. I also am experiencing discrimination because I'm a woman. I'm also experiencing discrimination because I'm Black. So it's these like different layers of discrimination, and it's really understanding the intricacies and the depth in which this can actually happen. And it's also, and a thing that Kimberly also kind of, she talks about in this amazing TED talk, and I actually shared it in the resources at the end, is that she says it's a way of framing the problem. And if we can't put words to a problem, then we can't fix the problem, or we can't solve the problem. So if we're not able to talk about it, then we can't actually move forward and do something about it. And I think that's a really powerful way of looking at it. So I think it's important for all of us to acknowledge this term. So then we have equity, which is the state where everyone, regardless of their ethnic background, country of origin, age, physical ability, or disability, or gender, has a level playing field. And I think we all know that this is just not the case at all. And I just wanted to share 2 points here, is that a woman is paid 80 cents to the dollar paid to her white male counterpart on average. A Black woman, again, this is going back to intersectionality, a Black woman is paid 63 cents to the dollar paid to her white male counterpart, leading her to earn 800,000 less in her lifetime than her white male counterpart. So that will just give you an idea of the lack of equity that there is out there in, especially when it comes to race and gender. Inclusion. So providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized. And these are some of the different things that come up. And I'm actually going to share a 2-minute video when it comes to microaggression. I think this is one of the most common things that we see where inclusion, it really affects inclusion and it really affects the way people feel. So I'm just going to quickly jump in to this so that we can just share this.
For people who still think that microaggressions are a problem,
Oh, you're so well spoken.
just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
It's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while,
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland?
sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date,
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
going grocery shopping,
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
commuting to work,
So when are you gonna have a baby?
watching TV,
We have to keep the Redskins' name. It's part of our culture and history.
or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John?
Give me shopping advice.
So
right
I
now.
live here too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every goddamn day,
Can I touch your hair?
multiple times a day,
So pretty. Can
Can I touch
your
it,
hair?
please? I wanna touch it. Can I please?
is fucking annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic in those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares?
Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try this challenging major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
He looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
Okay.
Неизвестно, как будет.
So I think that's, can everyone hear me okay? I think that's quite a powerful video that explains, you know, the buildup of these different things, these microaggressions, some of the things that might come across quite innocent, like, oh, your name is really hard to pronounce, or it's really exotic, or, I mean, I have absolutely said things like that in the past. I probably still do. There's so many, you know, it's like a total lack of ignorance, and it's just important, or it's ignorance, and it's like a lack of understanding. And of course, now that I'm learning a bit more about it, and the more I'm becoming aware of it, it's like, okay, that's actually probably not a cool thing to say. And when it's happening to someone, you might just think, oh, they're so sensitive, or, oh, you can't say anything these days. This person is experiencing that over and over again. So it's like, it's just a constant thing. And I think this is a really good analogy. So another thing that happens is racial profiling, mixing up colleagues. Maybe you have 2 Black colleagues. I've heard this so many times of people getting mixed up because they're one of 2 Black people in the office, and people think it's so innocent, you know, oh, I thought you were the other person, like, oh, ha, 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 I'm always getting you mixed up. It's not funny. It's like really bad. And that's total racial profiling, and it's just not okay. And imagine how that makes that person feel. And imagine how that, like, just, it's horrible. Imagine how much it will affect their self-esteem. Company socials is another thing that I kind of see coming up quite a bit, where, you know, especially when I was in London, a lot of them were focused around going out for drinks on a Friday. There's some people that don't drink, whether it's for religious reasons or whatever. Like, really you need to think outside the box when it comes to inclusion, and thinking about other ways that you can include people, and doing other things that maybe are better for parents, or, you know, not just focusing it all around booze. And this is such a common one. Having things like prayer rooms, breastfeeding rooms, wheelchair access. These are things that a lot of people don't think about, but are actually super important to make employees feel valued. And employees from, you know, minority backgrounds, it really will make them feel good and make them feel like they're welcome and they're at home in this organization. Using internal language and with internal communications, this is actually also something that I think is underestimated. I think it's really important that the language that we use, you know, when I first joined Thoughtworks, I still do sometimes, I say guys a lot. And there's lots of different, you know, feelings about whether or not this is gender neutral or whatever. You know, this is something I've grown up with all the time. I would have said guys growing up, and actually it makes a lot of people feel quite uncomfortable. And I didn't even think about this because this to me was just so embedded in my mind and something that came so naturally to me. But then it made me think, actually, we have to be super careful with the language that we use, with the things that we say, because guys might make someone else feel a little bit, you know, uncomfortable. So it's just about being okay with being wrong and actually checking yourself from time to time. So the why behind hiring diverse and being inclusive. So I just want to share a couple of statistics with you here. So racially diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams by 35%. Less than 2% of executives at the top 50 companies are Black. White sounding names receive 50% more callbacks than ethnic names. This is something I've definitely experienced having been a recruiter for the last 8 years. This is absolutely a fact. And there's been so many different studies and so much research behind this. And it's really shocking and it's really sad, but it's true. 67% of job seekers consider workplace diversity an important factor when considering opportunities. That's a massive number. And obviously it's important for people to be working in diverse companies, inclusive companies, and it's something that people are really considering, which is a great thing to see. 83% of millennials are more likely to actively engage if their company fosters an inclusive workforce. I think that's also massive, and I love to see that millennials and the youth and, you know, the people who are going to be the future are really taking this seriously and they're thinking about this, and it's important for them when they're making a decision. It was definitely important for me. That's why I'm now working at Thoughtworks. It's a really big thing for Thoughtworks, and it was definitely something that I had front and center of my job search. 43% of companies with diverse management exhibit higher profits. And then last point, largely inclusive companies are more likely to hit their financial goals by up to 120%. Now that is like huge. I mean, all of the data, all of the numbers, these studies, the research is pointing to the fact that it is more beneficial, not just for your employees, but for your company, for your revenue, to actually have a diverse workforce. And I just wanted to share this other kind of, I guess, it's a study that was done by The Guardian, and they looked at the people who hold leadership positions in the UK. And I wanted to do this. So this is the UK. I wanted to pick somewhere on our doorstep, kind of. We put a lot of emphasis on what happens in the US, and we always think it's their problem and that it's not over here in Europe. Okay, let's just pretend for 5 minutes that the UK is still in Europe. We don't really track this sort of data or research in Germany because that's another problem for another day, but Germany doesn't track anything really around race, ethnicity, and it's definitely a problem because then, of course, as we mentioned before, you can't really solve the problem if you can't put words to the problem or numbers to the problem. But here, in the top leadership positions, bearing in mind that 13% of the UK population is Black, 1.5% hold leadership positions. And then you have 92% over here in the white category on the right-hand side who hold the leadership positions. And it makes me see one thing really, and one thing only, is that even though the research is pointing in the right direction, we have a problem. And to me, it feels like, and it looks like, it's the systemic racism that we're all experiencing, that we're seeing, that is pretty much undeniable. And the numbers obviously speak for themselves. Where to start? So the how, when it comes to diversity. So my story around this is that I started working for, I mean, I always was passionate about this topic, but I started working for Gartner a few years ago, and I was working with this amazing woman called Emily Miller. Some of you know her. And she said to me, you know, okay, we have a bit of a problem. The pipeline is all white men. And I was like, oh God, how did I not see that? Like, wow, this is something that I'm like always talking about, but it was right under my nose. It was just this like consistent. I was doing recruiting for salespeople, selling out. It's technology sales essentially. And I was thinking, wow, I did not even think about this. So anyway, I took some measures. Gartner were not great at giving resources for me at the time for actually putting money behind this. So I had to find a way to do this for free. So I came up with a way. And one of the things I did was I found a free 2-week trial for an algorithm that would change the way I wrote my jobs. So a big thing was actually the way I advertised. The language was very focused on, let's say it was very masculine and it was very specific. And a lot of different studies show that a woman will only apply to a job if she can do 100% of what's on that job description, whereas a man will apply if he can do 60%. So this was kind of mind blowing. And then I changed the adverts, and then the response rate was that I had nearly 40% more women applying for the role. And from the time that I joined the company and from the time that I left, I had made a lot of diverse hires, which I was very proud of. But I was thinking, oh my God, if it had not been pointed out to me, would I have done anything about it? And it's just that kind of moment of reflection. And it's like one person pointing something out to you that could be under your nose can make a massive difference. So just going through these points, creating and refining attributes for hiring, this is like the number one most important thing to do, is create your like requirements for the job, whether it's like collaboration skills or whether it's technical skills of some sort. If you create these attributes and you stick to them, then you can make evidence-based decisions when you're hiring. So you're in an interview and you have this is what we do at Thoughtworks. You have these attributes. You say, okay, this person met this attribute. They showed evidence that they did that because I asked them this example-based question. An example-based question is me saying, okay, can you give me an example of a time where you collaborated with a team on a project, or you led a project, or a client came at you with a difficult demand? What did you do in that situation? So maybe one of the attributes might be handles ambiguous situations. And I can say, oh, they can do that based on what they said. When I asked them the question, the example was that the client came at them at the last minute before they were to go live, or whatever it was. So having those attributes helps you make those evidence-based decisions, and you're not going with your gut. And a lot of us have done that before, where we can say like, oh, I really go with my gut, but your gut, and we'll go on to this, is often your unconscious bias. Creating company-wide hiring goals. So when I joined Thoughtworks, again, this was something that was kind of mind-blowing for me, that they actually had quite strict hiring goals. So last year we had a goal, our target, that we would hire 40% UGM. So UGM stands for underrepresented gender minorities, so like non-male candidates. And we actually hit, I think, 43% of our goal, which was awesome. But one thing I really noticed is that everyone is bought into this target. Your recruiting team, your leadership team, you have to report back on these targets and say, hey, I hired this woman. This means that I'm like this far off my diversity target. So actually being accountable to this target makes a massive difference. And of course, it takes more effort to find more women or to find more Black and people of color, but that's part of this. You have to be deliberate. So having these hiring goals is very definitely, even if you start small, it's a really good thing to work towards. Diversifying your pipelines and your interview panels. I think this is super important, just to make sure that you are actually creating a diverse pipeline. You're being mindful of it. Maybe you're measuring yourself on this, and having diverse interview panels so that when you have people from minority backgrounds coming into the process, they see other people like them in the interview panel. It's going to make them more inclined to want to work at this company. It's going to make them feel more comfortable in this process, and maybe ask questions that they might not feel comfortable unless it was someone who's similar to them. So it's taking these different things into account when you're going through the actual hiring process. Again, I mentioned before about job ads being inclusive. Be really mindful of the language that you're using. A lot of job ads you will see have a disclaimer at the bottom saying, we reject racism, or we are an inclusive company. I think it's super important to have something like that. And maybe if you don't work in recruiting, contact one of the recruiters and say, hey, can you put this in your job ads? Because this is something that is actually going to help us attract diverse talent, and help that from an employer brand perspective, it's super important as well. Keeping everyone accountable. I mentioned this before at the beginning, but I think really leadership, it's not always, unfortunately, on the leadership team's agenda to drive this topic. Again, it's often lumped onto the head of D&I, but this is a leadership responsibility. This is something that we all really, it has to start from the top, and we all have to get involved in, and we all have to keep everyone accountable to this. And I brought the Rooney Rule into it, and I want to mention this. This was something that the NFL introduced in 2002, and I think in 6 years they tripled their. So the Rooney Rule is a form of affirmative action where they made a rule in hiring in the NFL. They realized, okay, we have a lot of Black players, but we have hardly any Black people in senior or head coach positions or in head office. So they embedded this affirmative action rule into their hiring processes, to mean that there had to be one Black person or one minority person in their processes at any given stage. And it meant they trebled their head coach roles in, I think, 6 years. I mean, it was a small number, but it still made a massive difference. And many companies use things like affirmative action and things like this to actually make deliberate change, which I think is great. Be thoughtful where you source your talent from and deliberate with your efforts. So one of the things we did, one of our sourcing teams at Thoughtworks did some research last year, and I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but we looked at the different channels in where our best talent came from. So for example, if they would come from an advert, maybe we would need to interview like 100 people to get to one offer. If we sourced people, then we would only need to interview maybe 10 people. When I say sourced, I mean proactively getting on LinkedIn, looking at people's profile, contacting them, being specific about who you're going for. Then we would maybe only have to interview 10 people to actually come to an offer. So it was higher quality because the people were more relevant in terms of their skills. And we also found that it was a better source for diverse candidates. So sourcing and referrals was another big one. For actually getting diverse hires through the door. And the next point is about referral bonuses. At the moment, we are trialing having a higher reward for diverse candidates. So we give a referral bonus, which means, to those of you who aren't in recruiting, a referral is when you're working in a company and you think, okay, I have this friend who would be great to work here. I'm going to send them to the recruiter, and then you get a bonus. We make that bonus higher if you refer someone from a diverse background. So that's, so far it seems to be good, and I hope that it's going to work because I think it's a great idea. So maybe that's an idea for other people to implement in their organizations too. Measure your metrics and your progress, whether it's like minor and it's an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, I'm absolutely terrible at admin, as you can see from my absolutely great slides, but measuring your progress is so important. Measuring the offers that you make to people and like looking at who you're offering and keeping track of all of this, also so that you can reflect on it and think, okay, so this year, let's say I made 20% hires that were UGM or that were from diverse backgrounds. Next year, I want to up that by 10%. It's super important because when you can change or you can improve whatever you can measure. And just a final point, it starts with you. One person can make a massive difference really in an organization, but not only that, really in people's lives. You can make a huge difference, especially if you are an influential person who's getting involved in hiring decisions. If you are a recruiter who's seeking out talent, just make that extra effort and look for you know, look for people from diverse backgrounds, like try and just really making a massive effort and being that advocate and really taking action as an individual is super important. So when it comes to equity, this is a really important one. I think equity is something that we don't talk about often enough. And I think, you know, I talk about this a lot, and with my network that I have with my friend Pammy and Oweni, we talk about this because we do a lot of salary negotiation with women. And one of the things that I say to other recruiters, and that I live by this rule, is that I don't ask candidates their current salary, because as far as I'm concerned, it's not relevant. So I know in my head the range of salary that, let's say, if you're coming into Thoughtworks as a consultant, I know what we can offer you, because we have created those ranges so that we can be fair. And moving on to the next point, you have the bottom, the median, and the top range, so that it is fair, and you go based on their years of experience, or based on how well they did in the interview and how much actual hands-on experience they have. Because when you ask a candidate their current salary, let's say they started off in their career and they weren't very good at negotiating and they were underpaid from their very first job. And imagine this has happened their whole career, and maybe they've had 5 jobs. They've been underpaid for their entire career because everyone has asked them, what's your current salary? And to be honest, a lot of people will take advantage of that. A lot of companies, a lot of recruiters will take advantage of that piece of information, and they'll think to themselves, oh, this person isn't very expensive. I hope people can hear me. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. Oh, is it okay? Okay. So yeah, I've lost my trail of thought now. But anyway, it's not relevant. It's actually, I wouldn't say it's illegal, but it's banned in many states in the US to ask people for their current salary. It's a non-event. We don't need to do it. We definitely don't need to be going off people's current salary. It's a way of underpaying people, and it's not fair. So let's all avoid doing this from now on. You ask, what is your salary expectation? If they say something like 100K or 50K or whatever number they give you, if it is outside the range, all you have to say, it's outside the range. I'm really sorry. You know in your head what you can likely offer someone at this level, and you say to them, hey, look, this is probably the top of what we can offer you. Have the conversation with them at the beginning so that you're not getting blurred lines. Everyone's on the same page, and then there'll be no hard feelings. Going on to the third point, pay based on years of experience, or industry knowledge, or academic background. I also think this is a way to be fair with pay. I think, you know, going on that years of experience, then you can't really discriminate, because you're thinking about, okay, they have like a good amount of knowledge, they have good industry knowledge, maybe they come from, at Thoughtworks at the moment in Germany, we work with quite a few automotive clients. That's great if we have someone who maybe comes from an automotive background and they can speak that language and they understand this, or they come from another software company that's relevant experience. That's great. Of course, that helps us a lot. An academic background, of course, when someone has an MBA, when they have a degree, or, you know, when they have a good academic background, that's great. What I don't mean by this point is them coming from a fancy university, because that is totally classist. And I've seen this time and time again, especially when I worked in London, where you see people, clients or companies asking for candidates that came from red brick universities, Oxbridge, all of these fancy universities. And that's just, to me, the most classist thing you can possibly do or ask for, because it's not fair, and not everyone can afford to send their child to a private school or send their child to a fancy university. And yeah, that's not what I mean. Tracking salaries and making comparisons as you offer new joiners. So let's say you make an offer to, just start tracking now, you make an offer to someone and then you can keep track. So then the next person you offer, you can look at the last 5 people you offered and think, okay, it helps your judgment a lot. You can think, okay, I've offered these group of people X amount. And then you come up into a situation where you have a candidate and you're thinking, okay, I'm not sure about how much to offer this person. Their expectation is this much. And then, you know, we can't offer them that amount, or however you want to think about it. It really helps you balance things out. And it really helps you then like leverage that information and leverage that data to actually make fair offers. And when it comes to inclusion, these are some examples that I came up with. Some of them are free, some of them are not free, I'm sorry, but I would like to, the first example is give you the survey. We did this actually last year, the end of last year at Thoughtworks, and we did a Pekin survey to find out, I mean, there are lots of different companies you can use. I just wanted to give you the one that we used because I think we were quite satisfied with them, I think. This is really important to understand the health of your company. Like, how are your employees feeling? Where are you with inclusion? How do your people feel? Are they happy? Do they feel like there is opportunities presented to them? How do your minority people feel? You know, do they feel like there's clear representation? Do they feel like there is enough empowerment or enough, you know, room for them to progress? Look at the trends in your company. So we talk a lot about hiring diverse and like bringing diverse people into the pipeline, and that's great. And our employer brand is really good. But what about when they're in the company, when people from diverse backgrounds, especially Black people and people of color, how long are they staying, and are they happy? Are they feeling safe? What is the attrition like? So the attrition is how long you can keep people in the company. What is their engagement like? How are they working? Are they happy? Do you want people working for you that are disengaged and unhappy? Is that any sort of, you know, environment to have people in? So I think, you know, it's not only getting people in the door, it's looking after them when they're there and making them feel like there's a place for them to develop and there's lots of opportunities for them. This is also really great, is creating affinity groups, internal support groups and safe spaces. So another example at Thoughtworks, I mean, we have 1,000,001 groups, and when I first joined, got so overexcited and I was joining every single possible group I could imagine. And then I was totally overwhelmed because everyone was pinging me and then I had to leave all of them basically. But having groups like LGBTQ, Pride, BIPOC, anything, you know, all these different groups are generally just safe spaces for people to actually share their experiences and come together and, you know, just empower each other, because there's power in numbers. And when we come together, and sometimes, I know this isn't right, but our feelings sometimes need to be validated, or we feel like our feelings need to be validated. And, you know, if maybe someone has experienced a problem, it helps them to, or it helps us to talk about these things and share these things. And I think this is really powerful. And you can start it from nothing. You can just literally say, I'm going to start an affinity group. I'm going to email a few people, see if they want to get involved, or you just share it on social media. Anyone can come to me and we can take it from there. I think another thing is celebrating relevant religious, cultural days of importance. You have Juneteenth, you have Black History Month, you have Pride, you have Ramadan. Don't underestimate the importance of these, what these mean to said individual, what Juneteenth is going to mean to a Black person in your company, or Black History Month, or what Pride is going to mean to someone from the LGBTQ community, or what Ramadan means to a Muslim in your company. You know, I think that these are just things that we seem to forget about. Some companies are amazing at shedding light on these, but if, you know, if someone's doing Ramadan, they're fasting, and you're talking to them about, oh, you know, you're asking ignorant questions as to why they're doing that, or you're cooking your food in front of them in the kitchen. I mean, this is thinking about when we were back in the office back in the day. But, you know, it's just something that really, if you were to ask marketing, okay, hey, can you look up the different days in the year that we should be talking about, Chinese New Year, anything, just sending out an email. It's not a lot of labor just to acknowledge Happy New Year, everyone. Oh, hey, this is the beginning of Ramadan. This is what Ramadan means. You know, just sharing that information, that makes such a big difference in people's lives and people's mental well-being. Setting up programs for underrepresented groups to be supported and promoted. This is, again, something that is not done enough, and it really underestimated the importance of this. I think a big issue that Black people and people of color face in organizations is, first of all, a lack of representation at the top. So then there's kind of this mindset of like, oh, well, I'm never going to be a manager because there's no managers like me. It just won't happen in this company. So finding ways to support Black and people of color, people from minority backgrounds, to make sure that they feel supported, whether it's finding mentors for them or making sure that you're having check-ins and making sure that they feel supported, that they feel genuinely, I can progress in this organization. I can see like my Northern Star and I know what it looks like. Holding regular unconscious bias training, especially for people who are doing interviews. And we're going to come on to this in a minute and talk a little bit more about unconscious bias. So just watch the space. Being deliberate with your language. I mentioned the guys thing earlier. There's a lot of different, again, this leads into microaggressions a bit, but there's a lot of different words that maybe we use, things that we say that just aren't okay. And I think the microaggression video touched on that, but just understanding like the language that you use. Am I inclusive the way I speak to people? You know, there's different forms of microaggressions. Maybe you ignore people, maybe you interrupt people. Be really mindful of that. The interrupting thing, that's like a pet peeve of mine, and it happens all the time. It hasn't really happened to me much at Thoughtworks, but I swear it has happened to me on a number of occasions. And I now tell people, can you please not interrupt me? I'm speaking. Because what it's saying is my voice is more important than yours. So please don't do that. Holding people accountable for bad behavior. If you witness something happening, it's not always easy or comfortable to say something in the moment. I mean, it's preferred if you say something in the moment, even if you, I always find the best tactic is to say, oh, what do you mean by that? If someone says something racist or whatever, you say like, oh, I don't really, maybe they expect you to laugh and you say, I don't really know what you mean by that comment. Can you explain? And when they have to explain, you'll notice they probably start backtracking, and it's just kind of holding people accountable for their bad behavior. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, and maybe it's in front of people, you could say to them in a safe space later, in a quiet space, look, hey, that wasn't cool, just so you know, this is how that came across. And something that's really important to mention is that it doesn't matter about your intention. Your intention is not relevant. What matters is how it comes across and how it makes the other person feel. And we are constantly getting those things mixed up. It's like, oh, I didn't mean it, but actually it doesn't matter. If you said it and it hurt the other person, that's what matters. So all you have to do is just acknowledge that you were wrong, apologize, and move on. Another thing at Thoughtworks, which was quite new for me, was gender neutral bathrooms and stock of sanitary items. And hey, I mean, if you can afford beers in the fridge, I think you can afford some sanitary items in the bathroom. So inclusivity on an individual level. I have broken this into 3 pillars. So listen and learn. So listening to people's experience. Don't expect BIPOC to educate you or do your homework. Please do your homework yourself. Please read books. There are so many amazing books and resources on this topic. And of course, if you have a Black person in your life, a person of color that you feel comfortable having these conversations with, and I'm lucky that I do, and maybe that's why this topic is so close to my heart, then fine, then great. If they're willing to give you this information and share this with you, their own experience, but please don't expect the Black person in your life to educate you on these topics, because frankly, they're exhausted. Do some learning about microaggressions and do some unlearning about your own biases. And again, we're going to come on to biases in a minute. Another really big one, actually, getting people's names right. So please avoid giving people nicknames or saying things like, oh, that's such an unusual name, or I mean, I definitely did it as a kid. I've definitely been guilty of all of these things myself before, and I am learning and I am trying, but you know, it's just important to learn and acknowledge, okay, this is not okay. This is not right to give people a nickname. This is not okay to address someone in that way or call someone after a famous actor you think they look like, because that's racial profiling. So let's not do that, okay? Let's make an effort. You say, how do you pronounce your name? How would you like me to pronounce your name? Am I pronouncing it okay? How does it spell? Like, however you want to ask it, just make sure you're pronouncing it okay. Don't cry or make it about you. There's definitely been situations that I've been witness to where, I mean, I've probably done it myself for sure, 100%. Of course, it's a sensitive subject. There's a lot of bad things going on in the world. There's a lot of bad things happening to Black people and people of color. We all know that, but it's really when someone is maybe sharing their story with you, please don't cry or please don't make it about you. Just listen and, of course, be empathetic and feel their pain as well, but just listen and don't try and like reverse it and say like, oh yeah, that happened to me before too. No, it's, you have to just listen and keep your mouth shut, please. And avoid racial profiling. We touched on this before. I think you know what that means at this point. So watch you and others' behavior. How might my behavior make others feel? Again, this is kind of taking a bit of a moment of reflection and thinking about like, how does my behavior impact other people? Having a bit of self-awareness. We don't always take time to reflect on this. It's super important actually to just really think about what that might feel like to be around you, what it might be feeling like to work with you, to be managed by you, to manage you, like different things. So asking, am I inclusive? Do I use any words that might make people feel left out? This could range across a number of different things. You could be very, you know, masculine in the way that you're addressing people, having a very bro-y environment, or you could be just making people on your team feel really left out, and finding a way to listen to people, understand people, make them feel safe is really important. Would you step in if you felt like someone was being out of line? We touched on that already as well. And being okay with being wrong, just saying sorry and move on. And I mentioned before about, you know, how it's not about the intent, it's about how it comes across. And I just think that this is something that we need to be a bit more aware of. Using your privilege. I just want to acknowledge, I think sometimes when we talk about white privilege, it feels like white people have this sense of like, that we've been given something that others haven't been given. It's not about that. It's like we live in a racist world. We live in a white supremacist world. And it's not about what we have been given. It's about what we have not been exposed to. So we have just lived life going along, and there's been times where I've, you know, been feeling overwhelmed by a diversity topic, and I've been able to switch off from it. And that is totally a privilege, because I just live my life as a white person and I don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that Black people, or any of the stuff that Black people have to deal with. So lending your privilege, using your privilege is really important, and acknowledging your privilege and understanding it, first of all, is like the first thing that you need to do, obviously. Lending it is creating opportunities. You may have been given an opportunity based on you having white privilege or a certain amount of privilege in some situation. And it's about sharing that with other people, giving people opportunities. You know, I understand I have white privilege. I'm in a privileged position. I will lend my privilege anywhere I can to give a voice to someone else who doesn't have that same privilege. Commit to being uncomfortable. I really feel, as I mentioned before, that this topic is a really uncomfortable topic, especially for white people to talk about, the topic of race, racism, white supremacy. It's totally like something that we absolutely will avoid like the plague. So I think it's really important that we move through this discomfort, because even avoiding the topic is privilege, because we can, but we shouldn't. And embracing the discomfort, going through it, having these conversations is the only way that we will actually make any sort of an impact or make any sort of a change. Listening, so I put listen, listen, listen 3 times just to make it really obvious. So that's what I mean. So just listening to people's, you know, problems, listening to people's, not necessarily problems, but their experiences, and how they feel, and just understanding that their feelings are valid. And yeah, you know, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Again, using it to elevate other people, whether it's, you know, in a meeting and someone is interrupting someone else in the room, and you could even just jump in and say, hey, actually, that person was talking. Little things like that make such a huge difference to people, like standing up for other people. And just don't say you're an ally. Don't just say you're an ally, like be an ally. And, you know, it's so easy to do this performative allyship and to be sharing things on social media and talking about how much, you know, I'm so appalled by what's going on in the world for Black people. But it's like, well, what are you doing about it? Like, what are you doing at work? What are you doing in your everyday life to try and actually make sense of this whole movement, and to actually look at where you stand on this racial hierarchy and where you stand in this movement and what you can do in this movement? Unconscious bias. Okay, so I'm going to do a little exercise with everyone. So I want you to just look at this image. This is to assess our unconscious bias, and I'm going to go into the details in a minute. So there's 4 people in front of you that you can see. We have a pilot, we have an accountant, we have a software developer, and we have a nurse. And I just want you to just group them in your mind and try and imagine who's who. And then I'm going to tell you the truth about who is what. And I bet you it's not what you were thinking. So the gentleman holding the newspaper, he is a nurse. The woman next to him, she is a software developer. The guy with the lovely tattoos, he is an accountant. And the lady with the lovely pink t-shirt on with her legs crossed, she is a pilot. So I'm just wondering, and you can feel free to put it in the chat, if anyone was right with their assumptions, or did we automatically think that one of the women was a nurse? And did we automatically think that the guy on the left, because I definitely did, think that he was a software developer? And I don't know what we thought of the guy with the tattoos. Maybe he was, I don't know, the pilot. I mean, I heard my first woman pilot recently when I was on a flight, and I nearly lost my life, and I was so excited, but at the same time I was like, oh wow, that feels a bit strange. So yeah, we all hold these unconscious biases. So I'm super interested to see what people have said. Oh yeah, we thought the tattooed guy was the software developer. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, the point that I want to make by this exercise is like, we jump to conclusions when we see people. We put people in social boxes and we think, oh yeah, he's got long hair, he looks like a software developer, but what does that mean to look like a software developer? She also looks like a software developer, the woman next to him. The guy with the tats looks like a software developer, and the woman at the end also looks like a software developer. So it's like, ask yourself when you think, oh, that person looks like, you know, in the microaggression video you saw, or you heard someone say, oh, you don't look gay. It's like, well, what does gay look like? You know, what sort of a thing is that to say? Anyway, what are our biases? So I broke them into 3 parts. So we have unconscious bias. So at every given moment, our subconscious, so we have our conscious mind and we have our subconscious mind. Our subconscious is taking in 11 million images at any given moment, but we can only process 40 of them. So unconscious bias is like a shortcut, so that we can quickly, I mean, to be honest, a lot of it is like, it's ways of creating shortcuts so that we can think quickly and to make habits, and so that we can do things like on automation. But actually, it becomes very problematic when you start grouping people and making stereotypes, grouping people into different categories, making stereotypes. So the definition, unconscious bias, social stereotype about certain groups of people that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness. So it's like, maybe you might see a person of whatever background and you instantly think to yourself, oh my God, they're one of those. And they say it's not about your first thought, because that's the way you have, I mean, it's everything. It's the media. It's the way that society has conditioned us to think. So it's not your first thought that makes you a bad person or makes you judgmental. It's your second thought. So then you have to think to yourself, why did I think that? And they say don't judge a person on their first thought, judge on their second thought and their first action. So it's really about unpicking this way of thinking. Why do I think that about said group of people? you know, what is this based on? What factual information? Okay, maybe it's on my own experience through life, but actually what facts do I have that make me think this person is this way? Confirmation bias is a pretty dangerous one, and this is actually rife in the world of social media. So we have the tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that is consistent with one's existing belief. So this is, if I think that, oh my God, let me think of an example, I don't know. Let's say I have a belief about a certain group of people, and I Google, why do this group of people always do this? Of course, all of the articles are going to come up about this particular topic and confirm my existing bias. So it's going to confirm to me that this person is this way because it's confirmation bias. And I'm like, I was right. I knew it, actually. And the problem with this is because of clickbait, because of social media, because of all the things that we follow and that we like, it's sending us all of this information. It's like monitoring our online footprint. It's tracking all of this so that it can actually really see what sort of things that we're reading and what are we liking. So on social media, we're in this echo chamber and we're constantly getting articles and getting images and getting suggested this and that and the other that actually confirms our beliefs. So it's really important to look at the sources of your information. It's important to look at other people who have opposing views to you, talk to them, look at stuff that they're reading, and try and make your own informed decision based on a number of different sources and a number of different you know, pieces of information together, rather than just always confirming your own belief. And affinity bias is another one, which refers to you unconsciously preferring people who share qualities with you. Someone who's like you, this can happen because your brain sees them as familiar or relatable. So this is twofold. So it's like me interviewing an Irish person and being like, oh my God, I love Irish people so much. They're great crack and they're just so funny and like this and that and the other. And then of course that's going to cloud my judgment. And if I don't have the attributes to refer to make the evidence-based decision, then of course I'm going to be thinking about how great they are and how much I want to hire them. So it's really important to acknowledge, okay, I might have an affinity bias, but another thing is something that, and again, due to our like unconscious, the way we see the racial hierarchy, the way we see the difference in genders, it's like, maybe I might interview a man and think in my mind, oh, he's better for the job because he's a man, unconsciously, because of the way society puts white men on a pedestal. So it's about really asking yourself, why do I think this person is good for the role? What are my biases? What are my affinity biases, my confirmation biases, my unconscious biases? And how do I, and it's just about reflecting and questioning your decisions. And it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's as simple as that, but that's like the first step to really unpicking your beliefs. Okay, so we're just coming up to 40 minutes, I think. Oh my God, maybe we're not, maybe my calculations are really bad. So I'm trying to stick to the time, but I wanted to bring 3 key takeaways. If you're to take 3 things away from our talk, it's that diverse and inclusive organizations equal successful teams and happy, engaged employees. I mean, why would we not want that? Racism is not a Black people problem. It's all of our problem. And I think it's just something that is so easy to shy away from as a white person when it doesn't directly impact us. But we have benefited from a system that puts Black people down. And whether you want to accept that or whether you want to continue maybe being in denial about that is up to you. But there is so much information out there. There is so many different resources out there. Things are as clear as day, like how many stats, graphs, people being shot by whoever in broad daylight do we need to see to actually accept that this is a big problem. And it really is, we need to all get involved. And it's not an easy topic to talk about. But bringing me to the last point, it starts with you. We can all do something no matter how small it is, all of these things have an impact. All of these things have a butterfly effect, because you may talk to someone, or you may hold a workshop with one group of a small group of people, wherever it is, and then they may go on and they may feel empowered and they might put the message on to someone else. And I think it's just really acknowledging where you are with this whole journey, and just taking some time to reflect, like, what am I doing? How can I make change? How can I lend my privilege or share my privilege somehow? And what can I do? So I want to just take some questions as well. Before I do, I just want to share, I guess, one final thought, which has been something that has kind of stuck with me when I'm feeling, because this whole equality game, it's not a game, but you know what I mean? This whole equality thing is like, of course, it can feel thankless. Of course, you're not going to get a pat on the back from people. It's not about that. It's about actually being one person who's getting involved to help find justice for other people and to help serve justice for other people. And that's what it means to me. And I think about this whole movement, and I think about last year. And one of the things that stuck out in my mind and that keeps kind of bringing me back to this whole thing is like, when in 20 years, 30 years, when I have kids or grandkids, and this is going to go down in history, the last year and everything that happened in 2020, everything with the election, all of the stuff that we've seen in the media. And I want, you know, when my grandkids or my kids ask me, you know, what did you do when this was all happening? I want to be able to tell them, actually, I did a few different things to try and make some sort of change, even if it was small, and to try and actually take action and not just talk about it. So I think I would like to just leave that message. And, you know, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want to talk about this in 20 years time with your grandkids or your kids? So yeah, that is the final thought. And I would love to now take some questions.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, and especially for all the insights, not just from the perspective of recruiting, actually in general, from the perspective of organizations. There are already some questions in the chat. You can ping more if you have more. And I would get started with a question from Javier. I was not familiar with the concept of racial profiling. A quick Google led me to a legal concept about framing people based on racial attributes. What does it mean on this context?
Good question. Thank you for the question. So for me, in my experience with racial profiling is, so I'll give you an example. I used to work at a company where there was just 2 Black girls. They looked nothing alike. The only thing that they had in common was that they were both Black. And constantly, they were mixed up with each other by everyone. And because everyone else was white. And people would say it in front of other people. It was a very common thing. It was very normal. And it was like, that is just because they are both the same race. It's like profiling people. It's just assuming. It's the same way that, you know, who was it? Samuel L. Jackson is always getting mixed up for Morgan Freeman. It's like, just because they're both Black doesn't mean that they're the same person. It's just being mindful of making these assumptions and just thinking for 1 second before you actually go. And it's like, you're just not thinking, like, you're not thinking straight. You're not thinking about what you're saying. You know, it's just jumping to your first thought. Does that make sense?
I guess so. Thank you very much. I think it's especially about the same concept that you have in the original meaning of racial profiling, that it comes to the same situation. There is another question from Ines, and it's actually about your about data in your slides. There was the slide in the beginning, did you know? And they ask, where is the data from, what country?
Oh yeah, a lot of that data is actually from the US. It's between the US and the UK because, as I mentioned before, Germany is kind of colorblind as such when it comes to finding this sort of data and research. So I had to pull, and I listed the resources here. So a lot of it is from like Forbes articles, The Guardian, Harvard Business Review, Glassdoor. But yeah.
Thank you. There is another question from Judith. Thank you. They say first, and then my question is it a good idea to emphasize right at the beginning of a job ad that we encourage people with minority backgrounds to apply? So not just in the end.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. I think as high up as you can get the point as possible is perfect. Like, I think it depends on how the company is really about hiring from minority backgrounds. If it's something that's at the forefront of your agenda, then absolutely. I think the clearer and the more obvious, the better. I think a lot of people put it at the end. That's a really good point. I don't know why people put it at the end, because if it's an important topic, it should be at the beginning. So that's a great question. And I would encourage you to put it even as the first sentence in your job ad. So yeah.
Thank you. There was a lot of activity going on in the chat. Actually, we will share that all the chat comments later with you. I will just maybe point some things out that there are many people who, especially in the past year, did some thoughts that what they shared and started D&I groups, initiatives in their companies. And there is a question from Lena related to that. What actions could we take to increase inclusion in the companies where there is a lot of diversity washing? There is a lot of marketing about diversity and inclusion. Employees think they are a diverse company, even though the people saying it are often white men in leadership. And the hiring is diverse, but people feel excluded.
Okay, that's a really good question. And it's not funny, but it's like, oh my God, I have also like experienced this where it's maybe a white male leadership team and they're talking about how seriously they're taking the topic of diversity. And it's like, well, really, are you really taking it seriously? It's a hard one. So, okay. The best thing that you could do to actually put some data behind it is to conduct a research in your company, like conduct a survey. Now, I used Pekin as an example because that's what we did at Thoughtworks. Of course, you'd have to pay for if you were to get a third party involved, but you can actually do a survey on Google. Not that I am an expert at this, as I mentioned before. The disclaimer, I'm not good when it comes to these fancy admin tasks, but I do know you can do a survey. You could create your own survey. You could send it out to the whole organization, and then you can gather information and ask questions like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how safe do you feel in the organization? How inclusive do you feel the organization is? Do you feel that minorities are represented at executive leadership positions? And then you can use that information. I mean, all leadership teams will only listen to you if you have hard facts to back things up, if you have data, if you have numbers. So if you then take this research and take this data to them and say, hey, 50% of people aren't feeling comfortable. They're not feeling like they're going to be able to be promoted next year. They feel like there's a glass ceiling because they're Black. Then they absolutely cannot shy away from this. They can't deny this. And then it just gives you it puts you in a really good position to then say, okay, well, I can help you get involved we can do this together, but don't take it all on by yourself. Like, make other people accountable, ask for help. And yeah, there will be other people that want to get involved in this, but for sure, I would conduct some sort of research to see where you're at and actually like do a bit of a health check. Our Mo says pulse surveys as well is a good one.
Yeah, thank you for these suggestions and also for the comments again. That for Mo, there was actually also another question. If there was one thing leaders can do tomorrow to start making a change that will have an impact, what would you recommend?
Well, Mo, that's a great question. I think one of the things, just also touching on the topic that we just discussed around the health check, I really think listening to your people, listen to your employees, listen to their experiences, what they have to say. Like, okay, we're not all together at the moment, we're all working remote, but like sitting with people and understanding how they actually really feel. I guess the most logical way to do this, again, is the survey. But I think, so that's one thing. I know you asked for one thing, but just to give another thing that I think would be quite powerful is to implement some targets when it comes to hiring or when it comes to inclusivity. You know, maybe if you do a survey and 50% of people feel like they don't feel like it fosters an inclusive environment, maybe next year you want to say, okay, our goal as an organization, and the leadership team need to hold people accountable to this, our goal is to be at 70%. We want to make sure 70% of our employees feel like this is a workforce that fosters inclusivity. And like measuring it in that way is going to actually be a way for you to track this, and you can't change what you're not tracking. So that's another way. And of course, hiring targets. But I just think really finding out how your people are feeling and listening to them.
Thank you. You mentioned before that as a recruiter, you also started to look at the job adverts, like what you write in them. But I've heard that it's also sometimes important how you write them to get to other different people. Like, do you have some suggestions about that?
Yeah, for sure. So there is different algorithms and different like websites, and I'm actually going to share a link. I'm going to share a resource where you can copy and paste your advert in. So the one I used, and if you have money to put towards this very important topic, then I would recommend Textio. It's Textio. I'm going to put it in the chat now. So this was the one I think I mentioned. Why is this not working for me? Textio. This was the one I mentioned before. When I was at Gartner, I got the free trial for 2 weeks. So of course I took every single ad that I could find and reworded it. And this is a good one to give you a real, it gives you like an indication as to, okay, this language is very masculine, this is feminine, this is good, this is inclusive. Research has showed that women are more likely, again, we know the 100% rule, but also to apply for a company where they use nurturing language, I think is a thing. I don't know if that's also kind of sexist, but yeah. I would definitely recommend Textio. I do think you have to pay for a membership, but it's really good. But I'm going to share a free resource where you can actually use this. You can use, and you can, put all your job descriptions in there. And not only your job descriptions, like your company website, the words that you have, and the content on your website, and even your emails that you send internally. Like at Thoughtworks, we address people usually, what is it? When Christoph, who is our head of diversity, sends out the email, he says, hi, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. And just like things like that make people feel good and make people feel like, yeah, they're thinking of me, they're considering me. So internal communications is just as important.
Thank you. There is another comment or question from Javier. I'm also interested in material about what kind of metrics stats are okay together within organizations, if there is some legal consideration to keep in mind or to be sure about. I'm not sure.
Sorry, can you, if you don't mind, sorry, Susanna, would you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So they're interested if when you gather metrics or probably data from people in an organization, if there is any legal considerations to keep in mind.
Yeah, okay, good question. As long as you keep it anonymous, I think you're fine. I would double check. Hopefully you would maybe have a legal team or a HR team, and just double check that it's okay. But to be honest, if it's anonymous and you're telling people that you're going to be using this research to take it to management and you're not going to be publishing it publicly, then I don't see why there would be any issue with this.
Thank you. One last question: do all the Thoughtworks recruiters think the same like you in terms of equality for candidates?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, they do, for sure they do. So I kind of I drank the Kool-Aid, okay, because I've been here now a year and I've worked at lots of good companies. I've always been lucky enough to have a pretty good experience, but I think at Thoughtworks, the level of respect that colleagues have for each other, the level of care that goes into candidates, hiring from diverse backgrounds, hiring UGM candidates, it's like not even a question. It's something that we talk about all the time is, oh yeah, great. Oh yeah, another UGM candidate, great. It's really something that's front and center of our minds at Thoughtworks. And I mean, I'm probably the annoying one that's always talking about this topic, but definitely everyone cares about it and everyone is bought into it. And I think a lot of that as well is to do with, we have very strict cultural attributes. And I didn't touch on this, but I would often say that a very easy way to reject someone in what I've experienced when you didn't like them or when they didn't fit into your affinity bias, when you basically were biased against them, is to say, oh, they don't really fit in culturally to the company, like in brackets, like, oh, they maybe have kids, or they have a family, or they aren't the right culture fit, like maybe they're from a lower socioeconomic background, or they're Black and we're like a white organization, something like that. I have heard it time and time again where people have been rejected because of culture fit. In other words, because the company's racist or whatever it is, or sexist, whatever. At Thoughtworks, we have a cultural interview at the end. It's an hour-long interview. We call it our social change interview. And we basically make sure that the people that we're hiring care about the topics that we care about. So make sure that they're inclusive, that they see the world from the eyes of the oppressed, that they're open to learning and unlearning. And we refine these attributes to make sure that the people that we hire are going to be of the same frame of mind, in the sense that they're open-minded and that they're inclusive. So I think that's like an interesting one. And as a result of that, the people that we work with are amazing, and they're super inclusive and they're open-minded, and also they're very confident in speaking up. And sometimes I've even seen in some of the group chats, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is kicking off, because everyone feels quite empowered to speak their mind. And it's been really interesting. It's been a really interesting year working here so far. And I just kind of can't believe that I work somewhere where this is such a big topic. So of course you can see in my, if you're interested in a career at Thoughtworks, I have to say it at the end, you can scan my little barcode here. And but yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but I think we all care.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thanks for sharing all of that. And of course, thanks for answering all those great questions. We're now in the end of our session, and there were a lot of people actually also asking for some resources, how to get started and everything. And I can have a little spoiler that Amy has actually collected some of them. And I will ask you, Amy, now to stop sharing your screen for a second, because then Charlotte can share her screen again, and we can have a glimpse at your resources and some other updates. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Susanne. And I think actually there was one question popping up. Maybe we can discuss this very quickly. There was the questions if there are any tips how to deal with the 50+ age group. do you have something?
Okay. Yeah. That's a really good question, and it's a tough one actually. And to be honest, when I was living in London and I was in recruiting, I absolutely saw this happening time and time again. And there was a lot of this way of thinking like, oh, you know, if they have too much experience there, you can't, what's that expression? You can't teach an old dog new tricks, or things like that would be used, which is totally an ageist thing to say. And there was a lot of this in London. And I think, I don't know, was it something to do with sometimes the companies I worked for? And there was this idea that people with more experience, or let's say older people, would be less likely to, you know, be able to learn something new. It happens. Actually, a piece of advice I would give anyone who is a little bit older or who is more experienced or whatever it is in looking for a job is, so I would kind of acknowledge in a way, first of all, anything over 10 years experience on your CV is not relevant. Okay, it's maybe 10, 12 years. You can put older, like previous roles prior to that. You can maybe put them like in a little part at the end of your CV, but to be honest, they're not relevant. You only really want to show the last 10 years. This is my opinion. Maybe other recruiters have a different view on things. I also think it eliminates you being discriminated against. You can take your you can take your year from university, or maybe you didn't go to university. You can take your school, any of that, take it off your CV. Give people as little of an indication as possible to your age. This is not right that they even should consider your age as a problem, but unfortunately it does happen sometimes. And actually we had I think we had a woman call recently into the Berlin office and ask, she asked one of my colleagues who is amazing, Katja in Berlin, she asked Katja like, oh, do you have any issue with an older person applying to Thoughtworks? And I just thought that's something that we actually don't talk enough about. And I'm happy you brought this question up, because that's awful that this is such a problem. And of course we don't discriminate when it comes to age, and nobody should discriminate when it comes to age, because imagine how much experience that person has. And, you know, of course, this is another big topic. Maybe we need to have another meetup on this topic, but I would just take anything off your CV to indicate any sort of age or level of experience, because I think that this can be a possibility, but hopefully it doesn't happen.
Thank you very much. It's also quite a reminder that diversity is more than just racial or gender things, so to say. So coming to the last slides for tonight, and then we are freeing you to enjoy the rest of the evening. Here are some of Amy's top resources she shared with us. There are the books and Netflix and everything that involves links, so podcasts or YouTube videos, for example, will be shared by us within a follow-up email. So you can just click on the link right away and start with learning and listening to marginalized people, and start your journey in this diversity, equity, and inclusion topic. Our next,
do you want me to say something about the books or anything?
Oh yes, right. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I feel like I was also kind of asleep there for a moment. Really quickly, I'll just run through them. Natives by Akala. In general, anything by Akala. He's a British guy, and he's a huge activist when it comes to anti-racism, civil rights. He's amazing. He has YouTube videos. He's a rapper. He is phenomenal when it comes to history that has been whitewashed. He knows everything about everything. So definitely follow him, listen to his YouTube videos, listen to his rap music. He has so many amazing pieces of work, if you like. The next book I would recommend is How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Again, another activist who has a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of Instagram posts. He's a pretty active guy when it comes to social media, so he has a lot of content to share. I just thought of someone else, but I'll put it into the chat. Rachel Cargill is totally amazing on Instagram and absolutely tears white supremacy to shreds. So I'll put her name in there. But Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad is a book. So we have a book club that's definitely set up at Thoughtworks. We've only done, I think, 1 or 2 sessions for now. We're going through this book and it's amazing. And honestly, it's just really understanding where you sit within this whole structure it really opens your eyes to that and helps you think about ways in which you can actually take action against it. And when it comes to Netflix, the 13th Amendment it's about, and it's talking about the war on drugs, and it's totally shocking and eye-opening. So please watch that. When They See Us, admittedly, I actually haven't watched this yet. I've just heard so much about it because I am too emotional to watch it, which is totally a privileged position to be in. And I have to watch it at some point, but I feel like it's going to be hours of emotion, but absolutely it's super touching and it's horrendous what happened to these boys. And I would recommend, even though I haven't seen it, so I know that's not really right. Explain the Racial Wealth Gap. This is another eye-opening one. I love these explained series on Netflix. I think they're like 20 minutes long, but the racial wealth gap is something I didn't even think about. And what it does is, well, it sheds some light on the incident, what happened in Tulsa in Black Wall Street, which was just shocking. And it just really makes you think about the deep-rooted issues with racism and the whole cycle, and how, you know, it's just, there's such a disparity of wealth between Black people and white people, not just in the US, but across the world. So it's a really, really good one to have a look at and just educate yourself. It's 20 minutes. So yeah, and there's some links as well. When I send around the slides, you will get a lot more information, the algorithm about the right language to use. There's also an unconscious bias test you can take, the YouTube video about intersectionality as well. So yeah.
Thank you very much for this, and sorry for stepping over.
That's okay.
Last thing for tonight then is a bit of advertisement for a good topic. We have another event series which might be interesting if you enjoyed tonight. It's the so-called Migration and Identity series. This time the next event will happen in German, but this is a mix. Some events happen in English and some in German, depending also on the favorite language of the speakers we invited. And on the 4th of February, we're happy to welcome Victoria Kurovu and Ilona Stütz about the topic, warum Diversität beim Finden von Lösungen kein Add-on sein darf. So basically why diversity should not be an add-on with finding of solutions. And if you're interested, just visit our media page, just register for this, and we are happy to see you there again. And then wish you a pleasant evening. We hope you enjoyed it and you could take some learnings with you which improve your journey and help you a lot on achieving your goals you've set yourselves.
Thank you everyone for coming. It was so lovely to see you all, some familiar faces.